Okay, so in an attempt to find a better way to articulate everything wrong with this Rings of Power fiasco, I've decided to try out the classic Top 10 Countdown. So here we go. Top 10 reasons why Rings of Power should be canceled or shouldn't even existed in the first place. Coming in at number 10. Where did the money go? No, seriously. What the hell's going on here? The total production cost, including purchasing of the rights in the first place, is some estimated total around $1 billion, with a calculate average of 60 million or so per episode, is what they said. So where the hell did the money go? Okay, there are some scenes that, yes, are very expensive looking, and occasional set pieces that clearly cost some money. But then there's set pieces and costume design that I participated in Easter pageants that had better design than that. So where the hell did the money go? If I was any kind of management in a large, multi-billion-dollar corporation and we just spent $1 billion on a major production, I would expect better results than that. At least more consistent results than that. No, seriously, where the hell did the money go? Sure, you got great CGI and then actors dancing in front of a green screen. And look, I'm not even picky about graphics, okay? I'm not one of the guys who critiques the visuals in films. I watch B-movies and have fun. But there's scenes in the show that, I can't help notice that there's green screens going on here. I mean, it's not the best production design, so what's going on here? But that takes us to number 9 on the list. The terrible writing and the admitted amateurs running the show. In a recent public interview, the showrunners admitted that they had no idea what the hell they were doing. But then we knew that already because we saw the results, and of course, these guys are coming on to this major production with zero prior experience other than, again, as I admit, multiple movies they wrote that never got produced. That's not actually a compliment, guys. 10 years writing things that no one wanted to publish, it's not good. So why are these guys even in charge of this thing? I mean, what the hell's going on here? But we get results. You used to say you could get what you pay for, but not this time around. What the hell do we get here? We got, well, what you expect when you give that much money in the hands of people who've never done something like this before. But, I mean, God, do they not even have... Does some of that money now go to paying someone to review their own work? They could have hired somebody who knew what they were doing. Anyway, coming in at number 8, manipulating reviews. Now, this is where things get funny. So they have hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on marketing. They got their posters on the Amazon delivery vans. They have the Amazon Prime streamings putting the ads out, and everywhere you go, there's just marketing for Amazon Prime and Rings of Power, and yay, look at us. And of course, don't forget all the paid reviewers and paid YouTubers and influencers and all those people. So they have a massive marketing advantage to push their ideas out there, push their opinions out there, convince everyone that they are just the awesomest in the world, and then they still suppress reviews on their sites so they can filter out critical reviews. And then they have the audacity to accuse their critics of review bombing and manipulating reviews. Really, guys? So the collective of fans who just don't like the crap they made have some sort of collective conspiracy theory to manipulate reviews, and that's somehow meanwhile they have the $1 billion budget to push their ideas everywhere and suppress reviews. But no. When fans complain, we're the ones who are... We're the trolls. We're the ones who are insidiously manipulating results. See, maybe someone needs to tell these guys that the review system is how you find out what fans think, what the people out there in the world think. And when the people say, we don't like your crap, that means they don't like your crap. It's not conspiracy theory, and it's not some sort of, we don't have a budget. I have no money. Okay, there's a handful of YouTubers whose channels are big enough that you could say they're making money off of criticizing the show. But for most of us out here, we're saying this because this is just how we feel. Deal with it. That's what the review system is designed for, to find out what people think and what they like, and we don't like their crap. But somehow they have the audacity to turn around and say, oh, well, the critics are all trolls, they're all racist, they're all bad people, and it's just, they literally act like it's some sort of review manipulating conspiracy that you dare criticize their show. But when they spend millions and millions of dollars on marketing, they pay for reviews, and they pay for YouTubers and influencers to talk about how great their stuff is. Oh, that's not manipulation. No. All their paid corporate power, oh, that's genuine. But the reviews of fans who just don't like their stuff, that's somehow insidious. What is wrong with these people? I mean, what kind of weird cultural bubble do they live in that they honestly can just sit in their high corporate towers and talk down to everybody like they're the genuine ones? Oh, they're the righteous ones, and anyone who dares say words that they don't approve of, oh, then that must mean we're the bad guys. I mean, sorry, folks, the reviews are in. Most real people out here, most of fans, don't like their show. So the reviews are terrible, again, from a... Why is the show being made? No one likes it. The loud minority of people who do like the show... And let's look past the paid chills for a minute here. The people out there who like this show, I promise you, if you genuinely like Rings of Power, then there's a lot of other things you'd like too. Then you're very easy to please, your standards are low, and we don't need to make this giant corporate nightmare desecrating some famous work to please you. You're easy to please, okay? You like any crap we threw out there. This show does not need to be made for you, because you'd like anything they shove in your face. So, once again, they're manipulating reviews. That's their problem, not ours. More proof of why they shouldn't even exist. Well, let's move on. Coming in at number 7. They don't even have the rights. Yeah, they have the rights to Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and the appendices of Lord of the Rings. You know what's not in any of that? The Silmarillion. The Silmarillion is the book that actually contains the stories of the Second Age. The appendices of Lord of the Rings has some notes, a few pages of notes. So, really... how do they even have the right to make the show in the first place? The actual content talking about this story from the source material isn't even contained in the rights they have. So all they can do is they got just enough rights to reference some names and material. And of course, that's all we see in the show. Some references to the names, and that's as much as this show has to do with anything written by Tolkien. They just ripped off a few names. So if you don't even have the legitimate rights to the content you're trying to make, why are they making it? Of all the things they could have made, all the things they could have done, they chose this storyline that they don't even have real access to. So they decided to just, I guess, use that as an excuse to make up a bunch more content that has nothing to do with Tolkien, nothing to do with the lore. Or maybe, I don't know, you could have just done the right thing and not make the show at all until you actually have rights, or make a show that you actually have rights to. Number 6, and this is an important one. It's not an open canon. Let me clarify. See, some shows or some franchises were designed to be franchises. For example, most everything in the world of comic books have their origin in literally just directly pop culture. They were designed to be things to publish, new versions all the time, just throw out funny stories, just market something that the kids will buy. That's where comic books started with, just silly stories, crazy stuff, and it's fun, it's a cool cultural phenomenon, a lot of people have enjoyed, but they were designed for marketing, they were designed to just sell stuff, they were designed to be cheap entertainment, and yes, over time they kind of turned into bigger things, but that's where their heart is, that's where origin is, and that's what they're marketed as. See, in the comic book world, the IP is owned by a company. They hire different artists, they hire different writers, and they just make content. They're producing corporate content. Okay, I'm sorry comic book fans, but that's the truth of comic books. They're designed to be, they are a consumer product to just be consumed and rewritten and have new versions, and they've been corporate owned from the beginning. That's kind of how it works. Lord of the Rings was not that. It was a literary work written by one man. It was his lifetime work. He put a lot of thought and effort into how he was designing it, a lot of culture, a lot of history, a lot of mythology, a lot of religion, and he designed this art piece. It was not designed to be just rewritten and added to and changed whenever you want. It was never made as a franchise, per se. And the original author, J.R. Tolkien himself, was very clear on his opinions on this matter. We have documented letters of his opinions about this sort of thing. He did not like people changing his work. I know there's like this one letter where he says this one line about a hypothetical concept of people adding their own thoughts then if you take it out of context, you can try to use that as an excuse. But that's one thing he said once, talking in general a long time ago. And he has tons of other letters being very explicit about he does not like Hollywood, he does not like movie adaptations, he does not like people messing with his work, and you can find examples of him very, very brutally criticizing some nonsense people try to do when they try to adapt his work. It is not an open canon. When Christopher Tolkien, his son, took charge of the estate and published some of the works like Silmarillion, he was very clear that he was making... Yeah, there's some cases where he had to make decisions of what to publish and, some editing work there. But he had access to all of his father's notes, and he published only what his father wrote. He did not just go inventing new stories, even. And since Christopher Tolkien died, he was like the last true protector of the works there. But between Tolkien himself, his son Christopher, they were very clear. They did not like adaptations. They very tentatively gave up rights for some movies to be made when the Peter Jackson films first came out. But it was never an open canon. It was never every generation we're just going to have some new author take over and make a new, add their own additions. No, I'm sorry. I know we're obsessed with remakes and reboots and rewrites and reimaginings. We have this crazy weird thing going on right now in our culture where just nothing new is created and we just take old stuff and rewrite it. But that's not how the whole world works, and that's certainly not how Tolkien's writings ever worked. That's a unique phenomenon to, kind of current in pop culture. It's a comic book thing. It's not a Lord of the Rings thing. So, yeah, not an open canon. You don't just have free rights to add stuff just because you spend $1 billion to, get access to legally used material. Doesn't mean you can just add to it and expect people to accept it. Sorry. Anyway, moving on. Number 5, and this is where things start getting really heavy. That's contempt for the fans. Yeah, since they started, their marketing strategy has been, and they've even admitted that they knew this was coming. They knew they were planning on offending the fans, because they kind of knew they were trying to change the lore and people weren't going to like their crap. But their marketing strategy from the beginning has been with this offensive attitude towards the fans. And this isn't new. This has been happening everywhere in pop culture lately. All these franchises and different stuff being bought out and changed, and their defense strategy is anyone who criticizes us is a bad person. And they just keep doing it. And this happened for Star Wars. This happened for, countless others. I can't keep track of them all. But pretty much every popular franchise everywhere. And no different with Lord of the Rings. They knew from the beginning that they were going to, be pissing people off with what they were doing. They planned from the beginning to basically attack the fans. And they've been doing it over and over. Their constant marketing strategy is, when there's criticism, the fans are bad people. That's what their excuse for their suppressing reviews is because, the fans are have some sort of conspiracy to manipulate the results because the fans expressing their opinion somehow isn't legitimate in their eyes. The fans are all racist, we're bad people, we're terrible, how dare we not love what they do? My God, what kind of high throne do these people sit on that they think they're so righteous that if you criticize them, you're a bad person? But then they do this, that social engineering trick where let's add a bunch of racial diversity to the show. So therefore, anyone who complains about our show, it must be because they're racist. It's that's basically using civilians as meat shields for your army to advance. Okay, that's what that is. You're trying to create civilian casualties and trying to create chaos by using race stuff as like a shield for your own crap, and that's just terrible behavior. But it's been happening everywhere in pop culture, and it's no different here. They hate the fans. They keep coming out of calling fans toxic, calling fans trolls. Boy, if you actually love the work of Tolkien, and therefore don't like the crap they're making, then you're a bad person, and they just keep doubling down on that. And look, the only reason to make a sequel, a prequel, or an adaptation of a famous work is either because you love the work, or because the fans love the work, and you do it for the fans. So if you actively hate the fans, then why are you making this adaptation? If you think the people who like Lord of the Rings are terrible people, then why are you making an adaptation of Lord of the Rings? And that takes us to number 4, contempt for Tolkien. Yeah, you can't only go so far insisting that all the fans are terrible people before you're basically implying that the author himself is a terrible person. In that recent article, the interview they had, not the first time they said this, but they said it again, where basically implying Tolkien is racist, or his works are racist. And I mean, it's weird, because on one side of their mouth, they like to say, oh, the spirit of Tolkien is all about people coming together and cross racial and divisions or whatever, and working together to accomplish big things, and all that weird crap they say. So they say that on one side of their mouth, but then they turn around and say, oh, well, Tolkien has a habit of attracting white supremacists and racists. And it's like, well, okay, so wait a minute. So you think this, you want us to say that the spirit of Tolkien's writings is about people coming together across racial lines to work together against bad, evil, and but at the same time, though, for some reason, this work that's all about anti-racism is attractive to racist. It doesn't make sense. And when you talk about things, when they say things like a necessary redress of balance as a justification for their tokenized racial casting, well, you're basically implying if it's a necessary redress of balance, that's because it was bad before you came here, right? Because the show was racist before you showed up, and you made it unracist by your tokenized, casting choices. All right, sure. So, yeah, the fans are evil, and Tolkien himself is evil. If you think the work is evil, you think people who like the work are evil, then why are you even adapting his work at all? I mean, make up your mind. And let's go on to number 3. And that's the desecration of the lore itself. So, everything we've said so far is kind of background. Now we're going to do the actual product itself. What is being made? And again, the reason why we're making the Lord of the Rings was valuable, the reason why it cost so much money for them to get the rights to this property, the reason why this was such a big deal in the first place is because Tolkien's writings are already world famous. They've been world famous for a long time. All people of all cultures, of all racial backgrounds, all around the world have loved his writings. So the only value this show has is that they're bringing those writings to the screen. So you'd think you'd want to bring those writings to the screen. Well, other than grabbing some names here and there, there's nothing from Tolkien's writings showing up on this show. They have, as we've said before, they don't even have rights to most of his content, and most of what they come up with is just made-up stuff that's not even related to Tolkien. They're just jamming things in there, and it's like, but at best, it could have been fan fiction, but even then, it's like fan fiction is usually made by fans who like the source material. And I will be releasing a separate video later where I'll itemize all the ways in which they've completely demolished and desecrated the lore, in which they just keep... It's better to say that there's no lore there at all. They've dropped a few names, but this has got nothing to do with the writings of the actual Lord of the Rings writings, or the Silmarillion, or any of that source material. And if you're not planning on following any of that material, why didn't you just make your own show? Why didn't you just keep Lord of the Rings out of it? If you believe you're such a good writer, you can invent new material that's so great, just invent some new material that's so great, and leave Lord of the Rings out of it. Oy. And now, at number 2. So, the work itself, from the last point there, it has value, but part of what gives it value is the messaging, the meaning. What is so great about the writings? Is it just a bunch of fancy tropes, or is there something deeper? And that's the messaging. So here, coming in at number 2, let's just call it for what it is. Satanic Messaging. Now, before I go farther, let me be clear. I am totally in support of freedom of religion. I got nothing personal against Satanists. They have a right to believe what they want, and they have the right to make movies and inject their messaging into it if they want to. I'm perfectly fine with that. But if they do it, and they do it to a show that's not usually associated with that, like Lord of the Rings, then I do feel an obligation to call it out, and no problem calling it for what it is. Now, Tolkien was pretty nice, okay? He did not like allegory. He didn't want his stories to be some sort of direct references to political things. And he went out of his way, he clearly had very strong religious beliefs, and he admitted those beliefs are, motivating a lot of how he wrote the story, but he went out of his way to make sure that he wasn't shoving those beliefs down your throat. You can read his books, you can watch the movies based on his works, and you're not going to get preached at about religion. But those moral themes are still there. And that's an important thing, to be able to separate, moral themes from, direct allegories. Because anything you do, any story you tell, any work of art you make is going to eventually start having your moral themes involved, some kind. And those themes are definitely there. There's strong messages, and again, I could do a whole nother. In fact, I'm going to be doing series of videos later about the various moral messages in Lord of the Rings and the other writings of Tolkien. And he did a good job of making universal themes that everyone could get behind. About the value of humility and mercy, and love of nature, and yes, there were themes about people coming together a little bit. And he had a lot of great messages that really resonated with a lot of people, and people really loved it and meant a lot. And I get it. Not every movie or adaptation has to be some sort of, you don't have to make it a preach fest of trying to pull out all of his themes. And maybe not every author, every producer understands all those themes fine. Like, I'm not trying to be some sort of a zealot here, where it's like, you have to, your show has to include every single, opinion I have or it's wrong. No, that's fine. I get it. People are going to have different points of view. But when your point of view is very explicitly the exact opposite of everything in the source material, I'm going to say, what the hell are you doing? And when I talk about satanic messaging, there's... When you say things like, you have to touch the dark to know the light, sorry, but that's directly opposite to anything Tolkien wrote. And fine, you can disagree with me about it being satanic if you want to, but it's objectively opposite of what Tolkien wrote. His writing was about, you don't touch evil. That's the whole point of the One Ring. You don't touch it. That's why Gandalf didn't want to touch it. Why? No one, the whole point was you don't touch it. To even touch it is a bad thing. You certainly don't need to touch it. And so, yeah, their show so far, aside from directly saying, oh, you must touch the dark, basically saying you must ends justify the means. Sometimes you gotta do evil to reach good. And then they turn the elves into terrible, evil, genocidal maniacs, and then they turn the orcs into, oh, they're just sympathetic, and, oh, they just want to, stop. This is not just alternate perspectives. This is you're directly inverting the messages. Meanwhile, the only message they've overtly spoken of is, oh, this generic people coming together theme. I mean, and all the other themes of Tolkien are totally absent from the story so far. The only one, and then of course then they're explicitly saying terrible things like, dude, what are you doing? I mean, even just as an amateur writer, just writing stuff, you can write a generic fantasy without pumping out whacked out theology like that. And if you're going to read Lord of the Rings, you're going to read Silmarillion, and you're going to supposedly be a fan of all the stuff, and the best you can come up with is some generic theme about unity, and then some terrible messages about, ends justify the means, then you should not be adapting anything from Tolkien. Just move, make your own story, fill it with your own messages, but don't touch Tolkien. If you're going to read Tolkien, then you can't see that this is completely contrary to everything he wrote. Anyway, finally, number one, the biggest, most terrible, heretical offense to this entire Rings of Power. Everything else is just adding up to this one culmination. And that they are ruining the experience for future generations. The reality is, people don't read books as much as they used to. People see the Jackson film. A lot of people, new generations, are seeing the Jackson films before they're reading the books. And those films are now, they're a couple decades old. And now Amazon, with their massive marketing campaign and, their streaming services, they're pushing this Rings of Power out as hard as they can. And they know they're doing this. They know they're pushing it out hard past the fans. They know they're pushing it out past people who don't like their work. They knew they were going to have resistance. They knew they weren't even going to make very much money off this because they knew they weren't going to have very good reviews. They were prepared for all of this. The whole point of what they're doing is so that future generations will see their work first. And that's the reason behind all of this. That's why they don't give a damn about the fans. That's why they're going out of the way to brand fans of the source material as terrible, awful people. Because they want anyone who criticizes what they're doing to be painted as bad as possible, so that the younger generations, people who don't know the books, people who don't know Tolkien, the people who don't understand what's happening, they're just going to see this from a distance, and they're going to be, seduced into watching the Rings of Power stuff, and they're going to be compelled to, oh, no, ignore the critics, the critics are all bad people. The people who complain about this are bad. Don't listen to them. Just watch our shiny colors, watch our overpriced, terribly written story. And so many people are going to see this first, and they're going to think this is what Lord of the Rings is. And either they're going to get turned off by it because it's so terrible, and they're going to give up and not bother. Or even worse, they're going to say, oh, wow, that's cool. So Tolkien writes stories. So all this Lord of the Rings stuff that people keep going on about. It's about genocidal psychopathic elves and the poor abused orcs. And about how, oh, you have to touch the darkness first. This is social engineering. Let's just be clear. Okay, I didn't even go into the blatant political and social allegories that they are shamelessly shoving into the film, which they also admitted they're shoving in the film. They've made public. They've admitted it. They've made the whole show about race beginning to end. And they want the future generations to see their stuff first. In their eyes, and this is just fact, okay, there's been plenty of... When you delve into the more political critics, and this is something I'll talk about more in other videos, but in the eyes of the social engineers, Lord of the Rings is a terrible influence on the culture. They don't like it, they don't want it, and they want it rewritten, they want it removed, they want it erased, and more importantly, they want control over it. And so they want to hijack the legacy of Tolkien, and they want to take over his cultural influence, and they want to make it their own so they can influence culture their way. And the future generations are going to see their stuff first. And the lame, complacent, simple-minded consumers who just ingest anything there just because it's there, it's on the shows, on TV, it's on the streaming services, they're going to watch it. And the generic masses of people who aren't paying attention will always outnumber the people who are in the know. That's just how it works. People who remember the books are in the minority to those who know the Jackson films, and soon the people who know the Jackson films will be in the minority compared to the people who've seen Rings of Power, just because Rings of Power is there. They put it out there, and that's their whole goal, for it to be there in the front line, so it's seen first. And it's a long-term strategy, cultural manipulation. They want their messages, their show, their name, their styles, and control. They want to rewrite the culture according to their image. And this is what's been happening everywhere in the culture. And we're letting it happen because people doing it have all the money. This isn't a cultural shift. This isn't, just people are changing their views. This is a small minority of extremely wealthy people who are buying their way in, manipulating their way in, and then forcing everyone else to take their shit, and we've got to stop taking it. Tolkien wasn't trying to push a political agenda. He wasn't trying to push a religious agenda. He was just trying to write a work that was important to him, about things he loved. And the world chose Tolkien. The world said, we like his works, we like his writings. He was made famous because people loved what he did. And they're trying to now just do the opposite of that. They're trying to use money to force their way in. They want to buy their way in. And there's no one left alive to defend him. The production to Rings of Power ramped up quite quickly after Christopher Tolkien died. And Simon Tolkien took over the charge of the Tolkien estate. And this isn't some sort of conspiracy theory, guys. This is just open, obvious fact. It's what they're doing. And if you know where to look, they're saying it openly. I'm not making speculation about what I assume people are up to behind the scenes. They're saying this stuff. And I'm not even trying to force some personal agenda back in response. I don't want to force agendas. I don't want to tell people what they're supposed to believe or think. Because I don't know, that's called tyranny, and I think that's bad. But I want to defend the free space. I want to defend the Shire. I want to defend the free peoples of Middle-earth from an encroaching tyrant who wants to use their massive centralized wealth and power to force everyone else to see things their way. And the only people left to hold the lines to defend Middle-earth, that's you and me, folks. It's us fans, the people who read the books, we watch the movies, we know what it's about, we know what themes, we know why we love Lord of the Rings. And we can't be bought. We're not going to just love anything. You can't just feed us slop and expect us to eat it. And if you don't like Tolkien, you think his writings are bad, think his fans are terrible people, and if you just don't like the works, then fine. Don't make adaptations of it. Don't spend $1 billion to hijack it and rewrite it and transform it and then expect us to eat it. Sorry. So, I'm standing the ground, holding the line. I hope you join me in this. And I'm sorry, but Rings of Power is not just a matter of creative differences. It's not just someone who, oh, I didn't like the way they interpreted things. No, they have directly and absolutely reinterpreted and destroyed everything. And I'll be talking about more of that in later videos, and I hope you will join me for those. So, meanwhile, please like, share, and subscribe, and all that YouTube stuff. Channel's pretty small right now, but this is what my entire channel is going to be about. Not just complaining about Rings of Power. I got plenty of that coming, but I want to defend Tolkien. I'm going to be releasing tons of videos about Tolkien himself and his works and writings and why they're valuable. And when you know what something is, you know what it is not. And I know a lot about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, and Rings of Power is not that. So, see you next time.